Okay. Alright, so a friend of mine called me yesterday, and he's actually a family friend. He owns one of these Claas balers, and he was asking me some questions about what to do with a certain situation. And I thought, well, this probably would be a good time to make a video on this baler and talk about how to solve this, because if there's ever been a complaint I've ever heard about this baler, it's always the tying system. The tying system on these is very finicky. You have to keep them in the adjustment. As long as they're in adjustment and you check it about every cutting, if you do one cutting, one cutting for us is 1,500 rolls. So about every 1,500 rolls, go through your baler, check your spring adjustments and whatnot. It has a like 2 or 3 page checklist that you go down. It shows all the adjustments on those 2 or 3 pages. You go down the pages and you set the baler to where those adjustments are. The chain tensioners, everything. As long as you do that, generally you won't have any issues with these. Now I'm going to go over some of the things that somebody might want to know about adjusting these. He had lost his manual. And he called me wanting to know if I had ever had that issue and what to do. And this gentleman had, I think it was 4,000 bales on it. And I don't think he's ever adjusted anything as far as checking all the stuff that the book tells you to check. So, I run mine about that long, 5,000 rolls. Never had to do anything to it. Not once. Nothing. And after that, or generally, I learned that you need to check it. And when I checked it, I was amazed by how much everything was out. And when I went and I reset everything, it went back to working just like it always did. It's perfect. So what I'm going to go over is I'm going to go over the adjustments for the net system, because a lot of people complain about this net system not wanting to feed or something to do with that. And I'm going to go over what I've learned through all the hay that I've baled with this baler, and maybe it'll help somebody out there that has one of these that wants to know how to fix it and doesn't know how, without having to take it to a dealer. And it's just a simple adjustment that's just simple maintenance stuff that you have to do on these, and you have to go through and check. You want to keep these things checked and adjusted. As long as you do that, they're pretty well bulletproof for the most part. Now once you get so far, your canvas will wear out probably around 10,000 rolls or so when you get to that area, and you'll probably have to get a canvas or a kit like I got, which converted this to the 460 design with the metal flap. Now, not to say that's the case with all of them, but that's really the only issue that's ever been with this baler. Everything else has worked perfect. And I've not had really any problems with it. But to go over this, I'm going to get y'all off here, so hang on. I'm going to show y'all the adjustments that you have to make. The 2 most common adjustments on this baler that you need to check for your net system is what I'm about to show you. Excuse the hay on it. I hadn't had time to blow it out since I last used it. I've got to do that and get it cleaned up. But first we're going to get up here and I'm going to go over some of the problems that I've heard. The first thing I've always heard is trouble getting this thing to pull the net. Now Claas has completely changed a lot of this stuff on the 460. When you really get to look at it, it looks kind of similar, but when you really look at it, there's a lot of things have changed. So what we're going to look at is this roller, is your rubber roller, and then you have a metal roller. Well, your net compresses between these two. It's just fluffed up there, and that's how it feeds. Now it's pretty simple. You just have 2 rollers you go over. A lot of balers have a lot more than that, and you feed it over and under and then back in there, as I showed y'all on that, I think the review or the comparison the other day. With these, you want to keep this at a certain tension. with your compression. There is an adjustment for this to pull the hay in. The other thing is your pull down springs on here. Now I'm going to get down, I'm going to show y'all how to adjust this. Now the first and most important thing is if you go to having problems with the baler not wanting to pull the net, don't touch these. Don't even worry about those. I know everybody's first reaction is loosen those up. That'll make it better. It will for a while, but it's not going to be your cure. If you don't have tools or anything with you and you put a new roll of net in this, which is when it does it, fold this thing up, fold your hood down on top of it. It'll stick up probably about this much, and wait until you bale about 15 bales through the baler. Then close it all back and it should work fine. Now when you get home and you have some tools, if you don't have them with you, which these balers come with a tool kit that's inside in there, so you should have the tools to do this, except for a tape measure. Now if you need a tape measure, do what I said. But if you don't have anything, this spring right here is an adjustment. There's a rod that runs up in here and it pulls back and this is what adjusts your compression on that rubber roller and the metal one. These are supposed to be set at 45 millimeters from the front of this washer to the front of this plate. Now when you have this set, do not go tighter than 45 millimeters, which I think 45 millimeters, the conversion for it on my phone says it's 1.77 inches. I always set mine at 1 3/4 inches. Same thing, it's hardly even off. It's not a big deal. It's not going to hurt nothing at that. Now, don't go any tighter than that. If you go too much tighter, now if you got a baler that's got a lot of hay through it, you might try going 1 round extra than what it says. Basically hook your wrench on at the top, pull it down, and maybe that might help you. I've had to do that when I had the canvas before and it helped me, but I would not go any more than that, because if you do, those rollers up there, the rubber on it will wear unevenly. And what it will do is it'll cause you to only grip on the outer ends and the center won't grip, and it'll actually ruin that roller. And it will cause it, and the roller I think is like $1,000. So what you want to do is keep this at 45 millimeters. As long as you do that, you're good. And you never have to worry about replacing that roller or doing anything with it for the most part. Now after you get like what I've got in it, you might have to replace the roller, but that would be the only time. Now the canvas, when it wears out, it'll start to slowly, you'll notice the net will feed, but when it gets down in there, it's not wanting to catch. And what that is that's your canvas that's wore out, not this system. As long as everything's set to where it's supposed to be, your springs are set at 45. These are set to the spec they're supposed to be. These are supposed to be a certain length from here to, I think it's the top of this pin up here. And you keep them set for the right tension. Now this is what puts your tension on your net when it feeds on the baler. Now you don't want this too loose, because if it's too loose, you're going to have excess net pop up as it stops to roll. Because when the net cuts off, this big old roll, and it's got a big giant roll in it, is going to be harder. It's not going to just stop on a dime. It's going to keep trying to spin a little bit. So that's what these are important, to keep these at the right tensions, because if you get that excess in there, when it starts the net again, it'll jerk it so fast that it can cause the net to tear. Almost like when the brake falls in there on these. Now these don't have like a brake pad or anything. They have what they call a it falls down and it clamps down on it and it causes it to shear off. A lot of them have that design. This one has it too. I like those a lot better than the brake pad designs, because the brake pad designs you have to worry about adjusting the brake and all that crap. But with these you don't have to worry about that. Now that's what the deal is with these. Don't loosen those. Make sure they stay to where the book says they are. I don't know the measurement for it, but I do on these. There's one of these on each side. There's another one on the other side, and then this one's here. You want these even, because you don't want one side pulling more than another. So you want to take tape measure and make sure those are exactly the same. The same thing with these. You don't want one side more harder to pull than the other. You want to keep them the same. And as long as you keep those two adjustments set right, for the most part, or just about most of the time, you're not going to have, I mean, very rarely have any issues at all. And that's what I've always done. But the main thing is make sure you don't tighten these too much and don't loosen these. I know we all want to when it starts giving trouble, but what it is, it's actually this adjustment. Don't go more than what I said because of what I told y'all, but that's it. The other thing that could be an issue is never really been a problem for me, is I've never had an issue with it, is this belt that runs this system might slip. But I've run this thing for ever now. I think it's 13,000 rolls, and I've never had an issue with the belt. So the belt is fine. At one time I had actually changed the belt out because I thought it was the belt and it wasn't. It was actually those bolts, and I didn't know at that time what those did. Kane told me that that's what my problem was those bolts, and when I called and asked him what to do, he told me to adjust these and how to set them and everything. And I thought it was the belt and it wouldn't. But as far as the belt goes, I've never had any issues there. But that's pretty well the system. Now, the newer balers are going to have a design for that 10 piece down here that I put on the other day. Y'all go back and look at the kit. It's down there. They're going to have a design for that, and you have an adjustment on the pressure that pushes up on that, but it'll tell you how to do all that in your manual. Same thing, keep the bolt enough tension on it right. You don't want to go too much because it can cause damage. So they're pretty simple. I mean, they look complicated, they really do, but for the most part they're pretty simple. But that is the most common issue with the net, and a lot of people don't know that. As simple as it is, a lot of people don't know that, and they worry themselves to death. Like the gentleman that called me, he took one of these off, had one on, had nearly where it was falling off. It was so loose when it got down to a small roll, and still could not figure out what was going on. And he had seen these but didn't know what they were because he didn't have his book. And I told him what to do, and he's going to fix it, try it and see what it does. But the other option, the only part that really wears out is the canvas, and like I said, it's a long time before you even have to think about that. But and the belt, I've never had an issue with it. Now the twine system, I hadn't really ever used it too much, so I'm not the right person to explain all the adjustments for it. So you might find somebody else that has used it, but when I have used it, it's worked good. So but I've never really used it a whole lot. But that's pretty well the adjustments for the net box now, and that's it. It's not that like I said, it's not that complicated really when you know what it is and what to do. You have two adjustments pretty much. You got this one and this one. Now there is another sprocket on the other side that has some springs on it that you adjust, but I've never had to adjust it. I've checked it every time. Twice a year, at least twice a year, and the thing's been on every time. I've never had to move it. The other thing is that you might have to readjust is your brake reset bar is right here. It has an adjustment, and when you open the hatch, this pushes up and resets this bar here. It comes up and down. I think it's where it pivots right here. That's what falls and breaks. You want it completely reset on this sprocket that's back here that turns. And if you ever have any issues, which I've never had an issue with that ever, it's another adjustment I've never had to adjust. They don't really wear, you have to worry about that. So but if you ever have an issue with the brake not wanting to reset properly, adjust this rod right here. It's got a tap and everything down here, and you adjust it out. But that's it. That's your wrap adjustments here. You just pull this out and you set it on the number for your chart for the wraps that you want. Mine's set at 2.2. I think it's on 4. So that's the best way to go. And you go by the size of your bale for the wraps. So say I'm doing 60 inches. I find my 60 inch. And then I come down to the amount of wrap I want to put on. I'm doing 2.2. And I want it on number 4. So it's on number 4. And that's how you set how many wraps there is. Real simple. Stupid simple. It's not, it looks really complicated. There's a lot of moving parts to it, but it's not complicated. It's really not. And if you get somebody to explain it to you the right way, you're like, well, good God, why didn't I know that before? That wasn't that bad. So, main advice I can give somebody on this net system: when you fill it up with net, throw your net in, run it through the bars, do like I showed y'all, run the net down in there. If you don't want any problems at all, pull the belt till you get it down in there a decent way, and the net's run all the way across the feed roller like it would be normally. Close everything back up, get in your baler, start it up. You'll be fine on takeoffs. And make sure that this spring is adjusted properly, and these springs. Now these do get out, because over time these springs like this will stretch a little bit, and you'll have to keep these in adjustment as well. So don't think that those don't need adjustments, because they do. And as long as you do those two things, for the most part, you shouldn't have any other issues. But every time if I ever have an issue, that's the first two things I check, is that spring and the other one. And that's where 99% of the time, that's where it's at. It's in one of those two things. And as long as you keep those right, you shouldn't have any issues. If you do go too tight, like I said, you're probably going to have to buy a rubber roller. They're sensitive. You can't go too far. You can go a little bit past, but I would not recommend more than, like I said, 1 round. I would actually stay where it's at, and if you're having an issue, more than likely it's going to be your canvas that's giving you troubles, and you might need to get another one of them. But like I said, you shouldn't have any issues with that until at least 10,000. Claas did go in and redesign that system because the canvases were wearing out. The new metal design should not wear out. They give you plenty of adjustment and everything for that metal to stick in there. In worst case, you could probably just make a new one if you had to, or find somebody that's good with sheet metal and stuff and make you a new one to go in there. But the canvas, it's gone on these new balers. Don't even have to worry about it. The feed the system, they've changed it a little bit, so it'll you don't even have to. It doesn't have to. It's not as sensitive as this one was. But as long as, like I said, as long as you keep that spring adjusted and the compression spring, you should be good to go. Probably for a long time with it. But a lot of people get worked up over it. I did, until I realized what was going on and knew what it is all about, and then now I don't even think twice about it. But when you load it, reset your brake, pull it up, so that way you can get a full net on it. Run the net through like I was talking about, start your net up, and you ain't got nothing to worry about. Thanks for watching. Please comment, rate, and subscribe. The ones that don't have Claas balers, I'm sorry, which is a lot of people. But if you ever hear anybody complain about the net system, it's generally because they haven't got one of those two things adjusted properly. Other than that, you're just checking spring links and whatnot on it, and tensions on your chains. Pretty much. It's pretty simple to maintain as far as that goes. These balers are pretty tough. They don't give a whole lot of issues. Other than that, I haven't, other than the net not wanting to start, and keeping an eye on these every cutting, I don't really have any, I haven't really had any issues with it. The feed's been great, pickup's been great. It forms bells well, it takes hay in perfect, never have to worry about stop ups, any of that. You just forget about it. The hydraulics, the only thing I think I did to it a while back is one of the cylinders started leaking around the cap, and I loosened the cap up on the top of the cylinder, and I put a new O-ring around it and tightened it back up, fixed that leak. other than that, that's been about it. So thanks for watching. Please comment, rate, subscribe. Didn't mean to bore y'all. Hope this helps somebody out there, because I know I try to give my information on some of this stuff. I know a lot of it's boring for some of y'all to watch, but because there's people out there that could use it, and I'd like to help somebody if I can, because I know if I could have seen something like this at one time, I would really have appreciated it, because it saves a lot of headaches and whatnot, because it can be something so simple with stuff that you don't, and you'll be sitting there beating yourself to death trying to figure it out, and it'll be right there and under your nose, and you don't even know what the heck it is. And then somebody says, hey, did you check that? And you'll say, no, I didn't even know that. And then you'll go and look, and then wham, there you go. It's just like the other day, I had one of y'all told me that you can buy steel-tined teeth for Vermeers, and I didn't even know that to go on the pickup now. If I'd have known that years ago, that would have saved me so much frustration. But thanks for watching. I'll see y'all later. I've rambled on enough.